Good day, everyone. I am Shela Sanchez, and my discussion is about the chapter 16, the Disjuncture and Difference in the Global Cultural Economy by Arjun Appadurai. Appadurai's essay was written in the 1990s. His essay is a deep analysis of how globalization shapes and transforms cultures. As a refreshment, globalization by which globalization means the process by which the world becomes increasingly connected and integrated. In simple terms, it refers to the movement of people and goods across borders, leading to the interdependence of economies, cultures, and societies. This phenomenon of globalization is driven by trade, technology, and the exchange of information, making the world a more interconnected place. With this regard, despite that globalization influences our culture across the world in most of the countries, Appadurai has a strong argument that globalization does not make our culture more um, homogeneous or uniform, that our culture will never be identical or the same. The reason for this is because there are disjunctures and differences, which means there are disconnections, lack of coordination, and diversity of cultures in the economy. Hence, globalization means cultural heterogenization, which means cultures are becoming hybrid, different, and diverse. However, Appadurai is not grounded or certain with this definition. It's because he claimed that both forces, the homogenization and heterogenization forces, they both cannibalize with each other, which means they constantly influence, compete, or transform one another. To start with this thinking, according to Appadurai, first, we should stop identifying culture as binary or two separate worlds. For example, such as first world, third world, poor and rich, traditionalist person versus modern person, east and west, and something like that. It's because these definitions are too simplistic according to Appadurai. Second, we should stop thinking that if one culture is superior to the other, we become uniform from the influence of that culture. For example, the West or the American what we call Americanization. To better understand what's really happening with the reality of the transformations of our culture in the modern world, Appadurai introduced five key dimensions of global cultural flow, each representing a different type of movement across borders. First is the ethnoscapes. It is the movement of people. Ethnoscapes refers to the immigrants, refugees, travelers, tourists, OFW, and other moving groups and people. Second is the technoscape. It is the movement of technology, the distribution and mobility of technology across borders. This also refers to both machinery and technical knowledge that spreads unevenly around the globe. Third is the financescape. Financescape refers to the movement of money through stock markets, currency exchanges, and international investments. Fourth is the mediascape. It is the movement of media and images through television, films, newspapers, magazines, and with our phone that carry information and stories across nations. And lastly, the fifth one is the idioscapes. Idioscapes refers to the movement of political ideas and ideologies. This refers to the concepts such as freedom, democracy, human rights, and justice. At this point, as you notice, the common suffix of those five global flows is scapes. Because it is from a root word landscape. It's because these five categories are perspectival set of that of which made up the global economy. These five dimensions don't move together in harmony. They operate separately and at different speeds, interact and work with each other, which is the reason for what Appadurai calls the disjunctures or the disconnections. Hence, the movement of these five dimensions overlaps and are very unpredictable. As we observe, these five scapes are moving across borders, and this process of movement is called deterritorialization. Deterritorialization means the loosening or removal of cultural, social, or economic practices from their original geographic or local context, which drives these five scapes. Deterritorialization is one of the central forces of the global cultural economy. An example of this situation of deterritorialization is when a Filipino decides to live abroad, or or in history when hip hop spread and adapted across countries. And with his idea, we can say that culture doesn't stay the same. Things move and bring their cultural identities and influence one another, and that process is called indigenization. Indigenization is the process of making something or a particular culture to become more local or native when adapted. An example of this situation is when the Philippines adopted the Italian spaghetti and then produced what we call the Filipino style spaghetti. We already saw the differences and disjunctures of the global cultural economy with Appadurai's model. The differences which come from the five scapes and the disjunctures or the disconnections which come from how the five scapes move around the world. Here's the question. Are these five scapes the fundamentals of disjunctures? The answer for this is no, because the fundamentals are the economy, culture, and politics. According to Appadurai, whatever happens in the global economy, it's always the three that causes it. So I made an illustration based on what I understand of Appadurai's explanation of how we should view culture in the modern world. I made my own Egypt model located in the lower left. So in a global cultural economy, with its three fundamentals, which is the reality of the modern world, the territorialization is the main force that drives these five scapes and their unpredictable interactions with each other. These five scapes make a building block to create what is called imagined worlds. Imagined worlds are what the five scapes produce when they reach and end up with us or the people's lives, experiences, and imagination. As a citizen, each one of us is called the agent or actor. An example of this situation is when an ideology as a Filipino is to live peacefully abroad, especially in Switzerland, which will be the part of my future goal. So that was my own example. We use the five scapes to imagine possibilities of our own lives. The five scapes give us the tools to imagine alternatives to what those in power want us to believe or accept. The imagined worlds are creative when it makes us to dream and create something. However, on the other hand, rebellious outcomes when we resist and rebel. After we understand the differences and disjunctures of global cultural economy, here's the three key effects. First is the production fetishism. This fetish refers it creates an illusion of national control that goods are made locally. In reality, the worker is completely detached from the end product of his labor. For example, an example for this is when you buy a shirt labeled made in the Philippines to any store, you feel proud supporting local production. However, the fabric came from China, the design is inspired from South Korean fashion, and the buttons, it might be came from Japan, and hence the Filipino workers only sew it together, which they are completely disconnected from the final product. The label creates an illusion of Filipino control, but production is actually scattered across multiple countries. Next effect is the fetishism of the consumer. This means that it is a fetish that creates an illusion that consumers have real power, that their choices control the market. In reality, markets and producers control the market. An example for this is when you buy a gadget and choosing between iPhone or Samsung. You feel decisive after watching YouTube reviews and ads that influence your choice. You imagine yourself as a smart shopper or a smart buyer. But in reality, Apple and Samsung already decided the features, prices, and options available using algorithms to manipulate what you want. You're just picking between their predetermined choices. Hence, the market controls you while making you feel empowered and free of making a choice. The third key effect is challenge on nation state. The nation state face pressure to balance openness to global flows with maintaining control over national identity and governance. An example for this effect is when the Philippine government invests in education and healthcare training to develop skilled workers in the future, such as nurses, engineers, teachers, but these professionals are convinced about higher salaries abroad. They create their own imagined worlds of better lives in other countries with better opportunity and higher salary, and then eventually migrate and work there. Hence, the Philippines faces a decrease in trained professionals such as doctors, nurses, engineers, and even teachers, which the country is desperately needs. And at this point, here are the positive effects when the five scapes interact. First is broad hope and imagination. Second, the spread of helpful technologies. Third is the influence of global opinion. And fourth is the progressive transnational alliances. And on the other hand, here are negative effects when the five scapes interact. These negative effects, the conflict arises when uniformity and differences clash. First is riots. Second, refugee rises. Third, state violence and torture. And fourth is ethnocide. At this point, I will provide a scenario of global cultural economy. An example is when OFWs live, work, remit money abroad while maintaining strong ties to their local Filipino communities. And the second is when Filipino media imports foreign shows such as K-dramas or Hollywood films that create imagined worlds, influencing lifestyles, beauty standards, political opinions, and social expectations. So at this point, here are my three questions. First, Appadurai didn't include what's the most powerful scape. In your own opinion, among the five scapes, which is the most influential and powerful that leads the global cultural economy or impacts globalization? Why? So, for my own answer, for me, Finanscape because it controls the other scape. Money is mostly the reason for the movement of people, technology, media, and ideology because of profits and capitalists. So, sa second question, with the five scapes, what is your own imagined world and why? In my own answer, for me, it is to work remotely with good gadgets and earn international rates. And the third question is which of the five scapes or cultural flows that you are influenced or you find your favorite or favored or unfavored one that yes your unfavored one and provide a reason. In my own answer, my unfavored one is the ideology or the in idioscape that the idea of success that most people define such as living a lavish life, which I disagree with. This is because it creates unnecessary shame and pressure and it distorts the essence of meaningful life.